Mr. Neal for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Mr. Secretary. Forgive me if I point out that we've all heard this argument before. Tax cuts and growth. 201, 203, $2.3 trillion of tax cuts. 2017, let's borrow $2.3 trillion in tax cuts as we project economic growth. But somehow tax cuts pay for themselves because that's the theology that became so popular. When there's a Democrat sitting in the White House, it's always about the national debt. When there's a Republican sitting in the White House, it's always about tax cuts. During our conversation that went pretty well, Mr. Secretary, I did remind you that you are a successor to Alexander Hamilton. I have known the men and women who have had the title that you have today. It'll be the title at the end of your life you, perhaps other than a family person, will cherish the most. The people that have had this job, they don't fudge the numbers. The people that have had this job, they don't bend to political considerations. They give advice based upon reality and the success you've had in your career. Since Republicans reclaimed power, they've had a trifecta. What have we seen? It's the constant chaos. Whether it's been the DOGE shadow operating as they rifle through confidential data, the blatant weaponization of the IRS, as they've attempted to change tax collection policy in this country, they have misled us, they have circumvented oversights, they have misled the public, and they have bent the levers of power to benefit those in the Oval Office. This committee is rubber stamping all of it. That is not our job. The members on this committee know I questioned Democratic presidents when I disagreed with them publicly and stayed with my disagreement if I thought it was based on principle. We see none of that any longer. It's what is stated at the White House that everybody acquiesces to on the Republican side. A blank check for the president. Never mind that we'll let wealthy tax cheats go. Never mind that the theology of tax cuts paying for themselves doesn't stand up. Never mind the pathology that if we only have tax cuts, it'll always work out. Well, they're attempting now to ram through what a very prominent former best friend of the president had to say. He called the tax bill an abomination. The Trump congressional Republicans certainly are about to make history. They're going to be responsible for adding $4 trillion to the national debt and simultaneously cutting health care for 16 million Americans. The changes that have taken place, the chaos of the tariff bill, we don't object to tariffs. When implied and suggested for an outcome, we object to the chaotic nature of how those tariffs are being applied. We've driven away friends across the globe. We've driven away careful allies. I negotiated USMCA. It was done the right way, and the president at the time said it was the best trade bill in the history of the world. Today, it's the worst trade bill in the history of the world. That's what we object to on the Democratic side. You've had a reputation, Mr. Secretary, for sound, fact-based decision-making. I hope it continues to set you apart from other members of the administration. But we shouldn't be attacking the scorekeepers. I have many days when I've disagreed with the Joint Committee on Taxation. I've had many days when I've disagreed with the Congressional Budget Office. I've had many days when I've disagreed with the World Bank. But I don't suggest it's partisan. I don't suggest that they're making up the numbers. I suggest instead it's an honest disagreement. And I don't come back to the argument that they don't know what they're talking about. The math here is true. It's projected correctly. $4 trillion at least to the national debt. That takes us from 36 to 40, $41 trillion of debt. When the new administration took office, they said clearly that the reality of their economic policies would be there for all to see. Well, you know what? They were accurate in that statement. The American people are being left behind in a system that is rigged, and I don't use that very often. The rich right now in America do not need a tax cut. Downward pressure on wages created by a lot of different issues should be reasoned and considered here in this committee. We could find an agreement with the Republican Party on an awful lot of things if we left the position clear, as we did in the previous administration, where those under $400,000 would have tax relief, not those over $400,000. Oversight is a sacred obligation of this Congress. Republicans need to at least, from time to time, ask a few real questions of the administration before the white flag of surrender goes up to these arguments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.